My name is Timothy, though I doubt that matters anymore. No one says it these days. Not my children. Not my neighbors. Not the young cashier who smiles at everyone but me. They call me sir, or worse, they don't call me anything at all. I've become transparent. Like a breath on a mirror, there, then gone. I live alone in a house that once hosted governors, artists, and rising stars. Now the paint peels in corners, and the garden has surrendered to weeds. But it's clean. I keep it clean. Discipline matters, even in decay. 73 winters behind me. My knees remind me of each one. Tea at 6. Walk to the mailbox at 8. The television hums silently all day, images flickering without voice, like my life, all picture, no sound. I read lips better than most. Funny what silence teaches you. I have 3 children. All successful, polished, and unbearably empty. They live in homes that I once helped pay for. Send them to colleges that drained my veins. I believed in building legacy, they believe in building distance. I see them on birthdays, if I'm lucky. They bring their kids, who stare at me like I'm furniture. One of them, Jake, the youngest, asked once if I used to be someone. I laughed. They didn't get the joke. But I remember. I remember the deals that kept cities from going bankrupt. The late nights, the men who feared my voice in the boardroom. I was not just someone, I was the storm they watched the skies for. And now? I can't get a pharmacist to look me in the eye. The nurse at the clinic treats me like a child with soft bones and a fading mind. But my mind is not gone. It's sharper now than ever, only quieter. More dangerous, maybe. I've had years to think. To watch. To notice what others miss. That's the gift of invisibility, you see everything. And lately, I've been seeing too much. I see the smirks when I ask a question twice. I see the way my son silences my calls, forwarding them to voicemail with a swipe. I see the glance my daughter gives her husband when I speak at dinner, the silent plea, just nod, he won't be around much longer. They all think I'm nearing the end. They are wrong. There's something they don't know, a flicker they've mistaken for dying embers. But it's not fading. It's growing. It's rage, yes, but colder. Controlled. Like the slow turn of a chess clock before the strike. I've forgiven many things in my life. I've turned the other cheek until my soul was bruised. But forgiveness, that beautiful, tragic lie, has limits. I'm not planning revenge. Not yet. I'm simply remembering. I write in a leather-bound notebook each morning. Names. Dates. Details. No one notices, because no one cares. They think old men write poems or keep track of medication. Let them think. But this pen of mine doesn't write poetry. It sharpens blades. They remember me now as fragile. As fading. But there was a time, and I say this not out of pride, but clarity, when I was the reason doors opened, deals closed, and grown men stood straighter when I entered the room. In the late 80s, I walked into a bank with nothing but a suit, a steel gaze, and an idea. They laughed. 6 years later, the same bank invited me to be on their board. That's how I moved. Not loud, but final. I didn't raise my voice, I raised expectations. I didn't threaten, I promised, and delivered. People talk about the 90s like a haze of chaos. For me, it was war. Real war. Not with bullets, but with balance sheets, betrayal, backroom handshakes. I built my company like a fortress, stone by stone, lesson by lesson, loss by loss. I fed my children while skipping meals. Mortgaged my house twice to keep payroll alive. I've stared into the eyes of bankruptcy and made it blink. And through it all, I kept my word. Even when my partners turned on me. Even when one of them, Daniel Cray, tried to cut me out of a 7-figure deal, forging signatures like I wouldn't notice. I could have ruined him. I didn't. I chose honor over vengeance. That was a different Timothy. I remember the nights I'd fall asleep on the office couch, coat over my chest, phone on my chest in case the Tokyo deal came through. I remember driving my daughter to school at 6 a.m. with one eye on the road and the other on the Asian markets. I remember taking my son to buy his first suit, and how he looked up at me like I was invincible. That boy doesn't look at me anymore. Now, they post photos of vacations I wasn't invited to. They send fruit baskets on holidays. The last card read, "Thinking of you." No name. Just a thought. How poetic. How cold. And my phone, it used to ring like a fire alarm. Now it lies silent, collecting dust, as if even the signals have abandoned me. I used to fight to find quiet, now I drown in it. But the past never really leaves, does it? Sometimes at night, I hear the hum of that old office copier. I see the glare of spreadsheets on a monitor. I hear my own voice, calm, commanding, decisive. And I wonder, was that truly me? Or just the story I kept telling myself? But no, I know better. I was power. Not the kind that yells or demands. The kind that builds. The kind that endures. And maybe the kind that remembers. People forget who you are when you stop reminding them. That's the truth of age. But memory is a double-edged thing. What they forget, I hold tighter. They think I've disappeared. That I'm too old, too soft, too distant. But I've learned something about power. Real power doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to wait. The cruelty of this world doesn't come from grand betrayals. Not really. It's in the tiny, careless things, the details they don't notice, because they don't see me anymore. Last Thursday, I called my son, Marcus. Twice. First time, no answer. Second time, straight to voicemail. I left a message, something simple, could use your help with the garage door. That was 3 days ago. No reply. But I saw on his business profile that he just signed a new partnership, plenty of time to post photos, but not enough to call his father. A week before that, my youngest grandson, Jacob, came over, briefly. He's 15. Taught to be polite, which now just means pretending to listen while scrolling. I asked him to help carry groceries in. He sighed. Like I just handed him a shovel to dig his own grave. He looked at me and muttered, "Can't you, like, order delivery or something?" That stung. More than it should have. I raised his father. I kept the lights on so they could have Christmas mornings. I broke myself into pieces so they could run without stumbling. In the clinic last month, I went in for a routine checkup. Blood pressure, circulation, the things that remind you your body's not yours anymore. The nurse spoke to me like I was a lost dog. "Sweetie, can you hop up on the table? We are gonna check your little numbers, okay?" I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I smiled. Smiled like old men do, the kind of smile that looks soft, but carries centuries. And when she left the room, I wrote her name down. Rachel. 29, wedding ring, but keeps checking her phone. Tattoo of a daisy on her wrist. I rose when elderly patients talk too long. The devil, as they say, is in the details. So I started collecting devils. In a leather notebook with a red ribbon I once used to mark Bible verses, I now mark sins. Not the dramatic ones, the real ones. The subtle dismissals. The eye rolls. The silence. The time the neighbor crossed the street to avoid talking to me. The time the pharmacist rolled his eyes when I asked about dosage. The laugh of 2 teens when I dropped my cane near the bus stop. This isn't a diary. It's a ledger. And it grows heavier by the day. They don't know what they are building. Every insult, every oversight, every forced smile or unanswered call, they think it disappears. But I collect it. Like ash in a jar. Like fuel. You'd be surprised what you can learn when no one thinks you're listening. I know which cousin is hiding debt. Which business partner Marcus lied to last spring. I know what Jacob searched on my Wi-Fi when he thought I was asleep. I know which neighbor is cheating on her husband. I know more than I should. Because while they scroll and boast and move on, I remember. And it's not just about me anymore. It's about the lie they all live in, a polished fiction where they are saints and I'm a shadow. But shadows remember the shape of everything they touch. So I sit here. In this chair by the window. Tea gum cold. News on mute. Notebook in hand. And I sharpen my silence. Because soon, they'll all learn something. That nothing is more dangerous than a man everyone stopped fearing, who suddenly remembers exactly who he is. It happened on a Tuesday. The kind of day that pretends to be harmless, gray sky, no wind, quiet streets. The sort of day that lets you believe nothing will change. I was walking back from the market. The cashier, a boy with headphones, had tossed my apples into the bag like trash. No eye contact. No thank you. Just scanned and nodded at the next person while I fumbled to gather my things. I didn't say anything. I just walked out with dignity I no longer had the strength to carry. The sidewalk was slick. My knee, the one that took the brunt of a car accident in '96, gave out halfway across the street. I stumbled. The bag split. Groceries rolled like marbles, apples, bread, eggs, a dozen shattered across the asphalt like my patience. People passed by. I saw a girl laugh. A man actually stepped over me. And then I heard it. One voice, sharp as glass. Just leave him. He's probably lost or something. No one needs him. That word, need. I don't remember their face. But I remember that word slicing through the code like a blade. Something inside me clicked. No, snapped. Not the kind of snap that makes you scream. The kind that makes you still. Very still. They thought I was humiliated. But that's not what I felt. I felt awake. I gathered what I could. Walked home. Slowly. Like always. But inside, the storm had started. I stepped through my door and went straight to the study. For the first time in years, I opened the bottom drawer of the old oak desk. Inside, a locked steel box. Inside that, my old burner phone. Contacts from another lifetime. People who owed me. People I had saved, and who now lived in towers, not remembering the rope I threw them when they were drowning. Next, the black notebook. Different from the red ledger. This one held plans. Not revenge fantasies. No. Real outlines. Real contingencies. I used to draft strategic responses for corporate crises, empires that bend to my models. That skill doesn't rot with age. I opened the safe behind the bookshelf. My archives. Files. Contracts. Receipts. Digital keys. Passwords no one remembered but me. Data I wasn't supposed to keep. Insurance, they called it. I called it leverage. And I still had plenty. I called no one. Not yet. But the moves began. Quiet ones. Subtle. Like rearranging pieces on a chessboard before your opponent even knows the game has started. I researched quietly. Found the cracks in their polished lives. My son's business, already teetering. His CFO has a mistress in a rival firm. My grandson. The contract he bragged about on Instagram, built on stolen pitch material. All traceable. I used to lead men with empires at stake. Now I lead ghosts. People who've disappeared like me. Overlooked. Discarded. And angry. I whispered in the right ears. Passed anonymous tips through encrypted channels. Old contacts, still loyal to the man I used to be, the man they knew was never to be underestimated. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I moved. And they didn't even know it yet, but the gravity around them had shifted. Because the truth is, I was never gone. I was just waiting. For them to stop watching. Now, no one sees me coming. And when they fall, they won't even know who pulled the first thread. I never touched them. Not a single threat. Not a single direct word. But everything around them began to unravel. It started with Marcus, my son, the golden boy. CEO of a tech firm that builds platforms to optimize humanity, as he puts it. I found the weak point, his chief financial officer, Travis. He's been laundering money through fake subsidiaries, using shell companies registered offshore. Marcus had no idea, he never looks down, only forward. So I sent an anonymous packet, clean, cold, undeniable. Tax documents. Internal memos. Bank statements. Enough to trigger an internal audit. By the end of the month, his name was quietly removed from the company's leadership page. They told the press it was a transition. But I know the board forced him out. I heard it from a friend of a friend, a man I once saved from losing his house. People remember when they owe you their dignity. Marcus hasn't called. I don't expect him to. Then came Jacob. The grandson who chuckled while I bent down to pick up groceries. He had just landed an internship with a major sports apparel brand, flashy stuff, viral campaigns, Gen Z targeting. But he plagiarized the proposal. Word for word. Took it from a lesser-known agency in Brazil, ran it through Google Translate, and pitched it as his own. How did I know? I watched his screen. Months ago. I saw the file name, remembered the layout. Most people forget what they leave open. I didn't. I sent the original creators an email. Attached screenshots. Timestamps. No name. No return address. The brand dropped him within a week. Quietly, but publicly enough. His TikTok account, silenced. His confidence, cracked. His silence, louder than any apology. My daughter's husband was next. Brian. The one who always said grace at dinner while hiding debt from his own family. He thought I couldn't read between the lines. But I saw the calls, the stress, the silent glances over overdue bills. And the worst. The forged signature, my signature, on a loan agreement from 4 years ago. He borrowed against my estate. Without my knowledge. Without a word. I made one phone call. Just one. A man I once bailed out during the 2008 collapse, he now works compliance for that bank. Brian's account is frozen. He's under review. They don't know it was me. That's the point. I'm not out for blood. This isn't revenge. It's clarity. I gave them everything, time, support, shelter, my health. And when I became inconvenient, they buried me in forgetfulness. So I buried them in truth. They built their lives on my foundation. I didn't destroy their homes, I just pulled away the lies propping up the front porch. Now, they sit in their modern kitchens, their glass towers, wondering how it all started falling apart. They blame others. They blame luck. They blame timing. But they never blame me. Because in their minds, I'm still that old man in the chair by the window, sipping tea, smiling at their photos. They have no idea. And I intend to keep it that way. I answer no calls. I respond to no messages. When they visit, they find the door closed, the lights dim. I'm home. Always. Watching. Waiting. And the silence they once gave me. Now it's a mirror. Let them hear it ring. They came together one evening. Not planned, at least not by them. A quiet summoning, driven by fear they couldn't name. My daughter arrived first. Her face carried the tension of someone walking into a courtroom, not her father's house. She knocked twice. Waited. Knocked again. I didn't answer. She sat on the porch. Then Marcus. The stoic one. Always in control. But he looked different now, smaller. Like the weight of his name had finally caught up to his spine. Jacob came last. Hoodie on. Phone in hand, but this time not scrolling. Just holding. Like it was a lifeline that no longer worked. They stood together, awkward, broken in different ways. I watched them through the curtains, the family that forgot me, now reassembled like survivors of a wreck they never saw coming. Eventually, I opened the door. No words. Just the creak of old hinges and older tension. They stepped inside slowly, like trespassers in a sacred space. They looked at me, really looked, for the first time in years. Not as a burden. Not as a relic. But as something they couldn't name. They didn't know what I knew. But they felt it. The way children feel the storm before it breaks. We sat in silence. The living room hadn't changed, same old clock, same photos, same shadows. But I was no longer the man sitting beneath them. I waited. Marcus cleared his throat. Dad, we don't know what's going on. But things have been happening. To all of us. I said nothing. Someone's targeting us, my daughter added, voice tight. Business, finances, deals, it's like someone's pulling strings. Still, I didn't speak. Jacob looked at me then, really looked. Not with arrogance. Not with irritation. But with something dangerously close to fear. He whispered, "Was it you?" I smiled. Not cruelly. Not bitterly. Just enough. I didn't need to confess. They already knew. And yet, they couldn't prove anything. That was the beauty of it. I hadn't broken a single law. I simply revealed them, to the world, to each other, to themselves. There was a pause, long, thick, uncomfortable. And then, like the cowards they didn't know they were, they each tried to explain. To justify. To paint over the years of abandonment with cheap apologies. I let them speak. Every word, a bandage on a corpse. When they finished, they waited. Expecting forgiveness. Expecting a speech. Maybe even tears. But I gave them none of that. Just a final sentence. Calm. Precise. I'm not angry anymore. I've just remembered who I am. And I stood. They didn't follow me when I left the room. They couldn't. Later that night, I wrote the final line in my red notebook. They came not to make amends, but to escape judgment. Let them carry it instead. I closed the book. Locked it in the drawer. The world hadn't changed. But I had. Not back into the man I was. Not fully. That man died a long time ago. But into something sharper. Something clearer. Not cruel. Just unforgiving. Because old age is not weakness. It's the final evolution of power. Quiet. Patient. Precise. And most of all, unseen.
Subscribe and like this video, more interesting revenge stories of elderly people coming soon.